we're going to be previewing Akron today. I know some of the Carolina fans are not super familiar with Akron. Carolina hasn't played Akron since 2018. So we're going to be giving you a little rundown on how they are this season and what we can expect from Saturday.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And look, I mean, the last time Akron played South Carolina, I was in college, and it's easy to forget that Akron wasn't even on the 2018 schedule when the Gamecocks did play them. They were supposed to play Marshall that year. It was like week 3 or whatever, but the game had to be canceled. I think it was due to, like a hurricane or weather or something. And Carolina ended up scheduling Akron for SEC championship weekend. So a weird game, but it's going to be neat to see these two teams go off again.
Definitely going to be interesting. All right. How do you feel about their quarterback? Have you been watching him, Ben Finley? He was at NC State, then he was at Cal.
Yeah, so with Finley, and the interesting thing about Akron here is they have a 2-quarterback system, right? So obviously Finley is their main guy. I mean, he's really slinging the ball, 56.8% completion rate, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. But besides him, Akron seems to really like using Taj Bullock, who actually has been playing a good bit. I mean, he was the passing leader in the game against Ohio State to open the year. But over the last 2 weeks, it's been a lot more of Finley. So for Carolina's perspective, I think the key is you're going to have to be ready for Finley to throw the ball a lot more. I mean, he threw the ball 31 times against Rutgers 2 weeks ago. And then you go back to Colgate last week, and the one game the Zips have won so far, he went 28 of 43 for well over 300 yards. So, I mean, make no mistake, he can definitely throw the ball around when he's given time in the pocket and stuff. But Akron also seems to really like using Bullock, especially in the run game, because I think that's where his strength is more. So I'd say it's a weird thing that Carolina hasn't had to really go up against so far this year. But it'll definitely be an interesting task depending on how head coach Joe Moorhead wants to utilize both quarterbacks, if he does really at all.
Well, it looks to me like Finley performed really well last week, so it'll be interesting to see how he does against Carolina.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, it is fascinating, the 2-quarterback system. You see it from time to time. And this week in media availability and stuff, it seems like the comparison is Bullock is kind of like a Lenore Sellers type in the fact that he's a little bit more mobile. And then, I think Clayton White had said yesterday that this is kind of like, Finley being like a Spencer Rattler type where he could throw the ball. So if for Gamecock fans that really don't know much about Akron, that's probably the best way to compare it, using both quarterbacks in what should be an interesting system to pay attention to.
So Joe Moorhead, 2018, 2019, he was at Mississippi State. He didn't seem to do too well there. Do you think he's doing better at Akron? Do you think he's building momentum with the team?
It's tough to say, to be honest, just because you look at Akron and they really don't have a great track record. I mean, so far, he's only won 5 games with the Zips. 2 in 2022, 2 games last year, and then they're 1-2 this year. And the schedule just it's a max schedule, but it doesn't help that they're facing Ohio State, Rutgers, South Carolina, 2 Big Ten opponents, and then an SEC foe in non-conference play. And they squeaked out a win over a Colgate team that is 0-3 to start the year. So it's not really looking great right now for the Zips. But then again, it's tough to gauge what to expect. I think Moorhead's kind of – the way I compare it is kind of like take the Vanderbilt job, for instance. Clark Lee over there with the Commodores. Vanderbilt really hasn't been good in the SEC. I mean, they're kind of the cellar dwellers in this conference. And that's kind of how I view Akron, just one of the lesser teams in all of the FBS. And it's a tough job, but Moorhead is well respected, and he coached with Clayton White for a year while at UConn, so they have that connection there. And Shane Beamer obviously has a lot of respect for him. Obviously, they haven't really crossed paths at all before, but they know what he can do as an offensive guru and stuff. So it's gonna be real interesting to see what Moorhead brings to the table. Again, Akron really doesn't have much to lose this weekend. I mean, they're getting paid $1.5 million to come here and play the Gamecocks. So if Akron, loses this weekend, it's not the end of the world. They're going to get a lot of money to put towards the school. But again, they're going to play, like they have nothing to lose.
I agree. I think they're in a really tough conference. I think it's kind of difficult to gauge how they are as a team. If they were up against maybe easier opponents, I don't want to say that.
They're playing Ohio State, Rutgers,
Yeah.
Carolina. Like Ohio State is obviously one of the best teams in the country. Carolina is off to a good start this year, and then Rutgers is slowly starting to improve in the Big Ten. So, look, the schedule is not easy, and it's not an excuse for Akron. But again, I mean, the best way to kind of spin it to make it seem like Akron's improving. I think they were maybe down. I think Beamer brought it up earlier this week. They were only down like 17-3 against Ohio State at one point, and then the Buckeyes obviously exploded late in the game to really, catapult to a 52-6 win. But I mean, there are signs that this team is getting better, but it's just hard to see that be the case this weekend. Again, who knows? But I think Carolina is in a really good spot for this weekend to kind of take advantage of a lesser team, like I said.
Carolina's offense looked really good last weekend. What are you thinking about their defensive coordinator?
For Akron?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so with Akron in general, I mean, you look at them, I mean, it's not really a pretty picture. I mean, offensively, Akron's only averaging 18 points a game this year, and defensively, they're allowing over 40 points a game. So the numbers are skewed a little bit just because, again, like I said, they're playing these really big time opponents. I mean, 2 Big Ten teams, and then they're playing an SEC school this weekend. But that doesn't excuse the fact that when they, played Colgate last weekend, I mean, they were down 17-0 at one point. So I don't really expect a ton from this defense. I think the one interesting thing that I did notice is that they have a cornerback that somehow is second on the team in tackles right now. They got Darian Lewis on the outside there, and he has 20 tackles on the year, and he's only 3 behind Brian McCoy, who's their linebacker there. So that's just an interesting thing. You don't see DBs leading, near the top of the defense and tackles and stuff. It's more interceptions and pass breakups and stuff. So I think this is going to be, again, I think South Carolina's offense should be able to score enough points this weekend. We're going to see if Lenore Sellers is starting or not, or if they end up going with Robbie Ashford. But again, I think it comes down to what Carolina's offense can do. And that should be able to kind of determine how this game goes, not so much what Akron's defense can do, because, again, it really hasn't been super pretty this year.
I'm going to have to say I'm a little scared for Akron's offense. Carolina's defense has looked really good the past few weeks. Do you have anything to say about that? Do you think that they can continue with their streak of getting 18 points? Because I feel like it may go down.
Yeah, honestly, I think the spread right now, last time I checked, is Carolina is favored by 28 points. So I don't know if I think this game really comes down to the fact of, okay, what's Carolina's offense going to do and who's going to be starting at quarterback and stuff. But I think from a defensive perspective, I think the first 2 games of the year were really solid. There were some things that you saw that, okay, a little bit of a head scratcher, maybe a little bit concerning, but it's not a big deal because you're 2-0. But last week against LSU, I mean, credit to that offense. I mean, LSU's got a really dynamic quarterback and really strong receivers and stuff and a great offensive line. So it really clicks for them. But LSU was able to kind of get the run game going for once this year and exploit a little bit of that defense. But I do think Carolina is still in a position to where even if they're giving up yards on the ground, which seems to be their main dilemma right now, they can keep the Gamecocks in games right now. And that's all you can really ask for. I think the turnovers are going to come this weekend. I think despite Finley having a better game last weekend, I don't expect that to happen again. And I think a lot of people are going to think, oh, this might be like the Old Dominion game where you squeak out a win. You only win by 4 points, this and that. I don't expect that to be the case because, one, these are 2 totally different teams that we're talking about here. I mean, Old Dominion's had a good track record of upsetting teams over the years, but for Akron, it's more of just struggling in general. So I think Carolina is going to be fine this weekend. A lot of it, like I said, just really comes down to, okay, limit the mistakes, limit the penalties, which I know were a big factor in that game against LSU. Control what you can control, and don't let Akron get more chances than they already will. So that's kind of keeping the main thing.
Okay, bigger picture, whole team. Who are 3 players you have your eyes on this week?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of options to look at. And you may look at Akron and just look over them because it's Akron we're talking about here. But still, I mean, they've got some talent on the team. like I was talking about before, I think Finley is going to be probably getting majority of the snaps at quarterback if the track record from the last few games kind of tells you anything. Just some of the numbers going through here. I mean, he's 50 of 88 this season, 549 yards. A lot of that did come in that last game against Colgate. I mean, he threw for 358 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. And again, he was 28 of 43. So easily his best game of the year. But I do expect Bullock to see some time. I think in a game like this, where again you really don't have much to lose, you can kind of do some trickery and try to catch the defense off balance. But I do think Finley is probably going to get majority of the snaps. And then in the run game for Akron, I mean, look, they might be throwing the ball a lot, but you're gonna have to keep an eye on Jordan Simmons. That's a guy that has been Akron's leading rusher this year. He's got 25 carries for 160 yards. He does have a long of 73 on the ground this year, and he only has 1 touchdown. So, if anything, I mean, again, Akron's run game isn't particularly like insane or anything. But if there is one guy you probably need to watch for in the running department, it's probably going to be Jordan Simmons. And then defensively, I brought his name up earlier. I mean, Darian Lewis, it's just such an interesting stat that he's second on the team in tackles for the Zips. I mean, I think if you asked anyone, who's going to be second on the team in defensive tackles, you're not probably guessing that a cornerback is going to be right up there. I mean, he's got 20 tackles, like I said, 11 solo, 9 assisted. He's got 2 pass deflections and an interception. So I wonder how the Zips and Joe Moorhead and that defense kind of utilize him. Do they have him crash in and try to disrupt the backfield a little bit, or do they have him just playing out in coverage? And South Carolina's wide receiver room isn't anything amazing right now. I think eventually, as the season goes on, we're going to see more guys step up, but there's still a lot of question marks in that room and some guys trying to figure things out. So I wonder if Akron tries to blitz a little bit more like LSU did. We're going to have to see, though.
So what do you think the path to victory is going to look like this week? Do you think it's going to be close? Do you think it's going to be a blowout like some people are saying? I know Carolina's favored, but how do you think they're going to take that path?
Yeah, I think many people are expecting a blowout. And honestly, I think for the Old Dominion game, I thought it was going to be a little bit close in the first half, but then Carolina would pull away. Obviously, a lot of people were wrong. I mean, that was only a 4-point win. And that was week 1. This is now, I think, Carolina, without giving it a definitive score prediction, we'll save that for staff picks this week. But I do think Carolina is going to be able to win by a good bit. I don't think they cover. The 3 keys for me are if Lenore Sellers isn't in at quarterback, what does this offense look like? And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about, do they run the ball more? Do they give Ashford some more opportunities to throw? How comfortable is he going to look when he gets in? Because I think he's going to be able to play a good bit this weekend. And we don't know yet how Sellers is looking. I mean, he says he's ready to roll, but then again, he's coming off an ankle sprain injury, and you might not want to rush him back out there with the bye week looming and then a really tough month of October to come. So I'm interested to see if Sellers plays for 1, but also if he doesn't, how does this offense look without him in there? And then I think just keeping the defense rolling, right? I mean, you need to be more disciplined with the penalties. You got to limit the mistakes, make more tackles instead of, missing out on something. It simply comes down to wrapping up and being in the right spots, in my opinion. And I think Carolina is going to be fine in that department. And then just creating turnovers like they have been. I think that has been such a strong point for them this year. I mean, they're top 10 in turnovers gained this year. And I do expect that to be the case again this weekend. And just overall, Carolina really needs a big win here. But something I've been talking about all week, and it goes hand in hand with the penalties, you got to be playing cleaner football to win. 13 penalties last week, right or wrong, was not good enough. And a lot of those mistakes were on Carolina, and some of them they can't control. But again, the ones they can limit some of these penalties, like the offsides, the false starts, the illegal men downfield, things like that. You clean that up and you play a better brand of football in that way, you'll be fine this weekend. And it'll be a nice way to go into the bye week because you'll hopefully be 3-1, and then you get Ole Miss in 2 weeks. October 5th's right around the corner, and I know a lot of people are looking ahead to that. But this Akron game, it's going to be a little tough at first, but I do expect Carolina to pull away this time around.
All right, I think that wraps up everything. South Carolina will be playing Akron on Saturday at 7:30 on ESPNU and at Williams-Brice Stadium. It's going to be the first night game of the year, so I know students are excited.
Yeah, and I think this is a really big game for Carolina. I mean, look, it's Akron, but still, it's first night game of the year. I think a lot of people are excited for that, and you'd love to be 3-0 right now, but you got to play with the cards you're dealt, right or wrong. And I think this is going to be a real nice pick-me-up, tune-up type win for Carolina before, like I said, you jump into a really tough month of October. But we'll have all live coverage throughout the weekend. Be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com for all of that. And like the banner says below, it's your home for complete, accurate, and timely coverage of Gamecock athletics. So definitely be sure to follow along with us all weekend, as we will have you covered from start to finish.
All right, thanks for joining us today. I'm Karenna Porter, joined by Jack Veltri. Make sure you stay tuned in to GamecockCentral.com. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.